Hi, Daphne. Hello.
Hi,
Thank
Gladys. Of
thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me today.
course.
I think it will be an amazing conversation that will resonate with so many people that are out there with tinnitus, struggling, not knowing where to look. So I really, really appreciate this.
Of course, yeah. As I was saying before, when we were speaking earlier, yeah, it's really important to me, and I do hope that at least someone can gain something from this conversation. Maybe my experience, because I certainly know when I first got tinnitus, I really looked um, to other people who had it and who were in a better place than me, just to give me hope as well. Um, but yeah, I also really I'm happy to be speaking to you because I really resonate with your content, and not just what you say, but the way you say it and the way you phrase it, which is really important. I think it's like a great bridge between the more kind of the expert side of things. When I first got this, I spoke to ENTs, I spoke to psychologists, still see a psychologist, obviously, a therapist, and then on the other hand, people who have it, who are on forums and giving their own experience, which both of those have their positives and negatives, obviously. But I think I can tell that you've got a lot of empathy, but also the expert insights, and I think that's a great combination. So I kind of wish I would have come across your content when I first got this, but actually I don't know if you were doing this 10 years ago, so maybe didn't even I wouldn't have even come across it because it didn't exist.
Absolutely. No, I wasn't doing the social media side of things 10 years ago, just working with patients on a one-to-one basis. And then I realized, exactly what you've said, where patients have said, I'm seeing so much online. I don't know what to listen to. I don't know what's right, what's wrong. And I just felt so obliged to get out there. So I really appreciate that. And what you said there. Tell me a little bit, Daphne, about when this all started. When did you first get tinnitus?
So yeah, it's coming up to unbelievably 10 years in this February. So I first developed it in February 2016. So I don't think, yeah, I'll ever forget that date. So it's coming up to 10 years now. So it's been a while.
Awesome. You mentioned there, Daphne, that you've seen ENTs, you've seen psychologists, therapists. Were you ever told what caused your tinnitus?
Yes. So generally, I'm a very type A personality kind of person. So definitely wanted to dig into what was happening, like what I can do about it. And some people say that especially if you're type A, if you have a problem, you want to fix it, it can actually be harder to accept and move on, or not move on, but kind of, yeah, accept that you can be happy even with this. And for me, like a big roadblock was that initial acceptance. So yeah, I initially developed it from an ear infection, actually. So probably I should say now I'm based in Athens in Greece, where I'm initially from, but I grew up in the UK, then moved back to Greece, and then moved back to the UK to study and work. So I was in London for 10 years. And I basically got what's called a middle ear infection. I know that when I was younger, my parents have told me I used to get a lot of ear infections frequently, but I never really had anything like tinnitus growing up. Actually, I didn't even know what tinnitus was, as a lot of people, before getting it. And I actually started. I had a cold, and basically that progressed into one morning waking up feeling a bit of sharp pain in my right ear, and then my ear blocking up, so I couldn't hear very well, and I kind of had that muffled feeling that you feel like when you're underwater and your voice sounds loud, and that lasted for like a week and a bit, like 10 days maybe. And actually I'd already started sort of having panic attacks then, because it was kind of it was a really scary feeling not being able to hear, but also, first time I went to the doctors, and then they were like, well, it's not like a viral, that you can't, it's a viral infection rather. It's not, that it's infected, so you can't take antibiotics. So you just have to kind of ride it out. So I remember feeling very scared, very worried. And then finally, one day when it kind of unblocked, literally woke up from a nap because I was sort of still recovering. And I had a ringing in my right ear. And yeah, basically the next year and a half was the most difficult of my life. I don't know if it would interest anyone to hear the technical side of things, but basically my ear had my hearing, and my brain essentially had compensated for the lack of hearing had made my hearing more sensitive. So when it unblocked, it started perceiving, let's say, the tinnitus. And I did have hyperacusis so I was very sensitive to noises just for like, the first 4 or 5 days. Um, but then, yeah, the tinnitus remained. It was kind of a blessing and a curse that the first ENT I went to was really nice, but he told me, usually with their infections it goes away, so don't worry, this will tends to go away. But of course, that actually, in my case, put me more on edge because every morning I would wake up and I would say, why is it still here? Why isn't it going away? What's happening? Really disoriented. My mum came over from Greece to support me. Um, yeah, I just felt like I needed her there, and that was also, again, it was good on the one hand, but also on the other hand, being with a person you trust and who you feel comfortable with, you do end up talking about it and ruminating and talking and talking and talking, and her saying, the doctor said it will go away, so it will go away, so don't worry. Um, and then the second thing was the sort of second stage was actually seeing a CBT therapist whom the ENT recommended in London again, who gave me kind of this gift and this first glimmer of hope, which was that, even if it doesn't go away, um, the brain has vast capabilities of habituating and getting used to this. And it's not and I said, I remember saying to him, like, so I just have to get used to it, and I have to live with it, I said. And he said, well, no, you don't have to live with it, because that implies that it still bothers you, but you just have to deal with it. But actually, he said, you will very, very most likely get to a point where it's there, but you don't react to it. It doesn't bother you. And it will be as if you don't have it. And I just remember how comforting that felt. And even though it wasn't a linear process, it's not like, he said that and the next day I was fine. Um, and yeah, and I did, through various ups and downs, which we can talk about if you like, get to a point where I habituated, which I never thought I would get to, but which really, it does feel like you've been given, I know it sounds dramatic, but when you've kind of been at the bottom of the pit, like afterwards, it does feel like you're getting a second chance at life, and that you just feel unbelievably grateful that, like, I can't believe I had this, which I once thought, that I have this, which I once thought would be the end of, my life, that I'm now able to function, work, have fun, etc., and relax. Um, in my case, the difficulty was then, in the fact that I am a person who gets spikes. I know that not everyone does, but I do. I think of quite a few people. I mean, you'll know, but I didn't really um, expect the curveball of motherhood and what that entailed in terms of my nervous system, my threshold to, tiredness, stress, sleep deprivation, all of that, basically threw me, and the hormones, right? Like, at a biological level, it's proven that, things like progesterone and things do affect the functioning of the ear. Yeah, I just didn't expect. And this whole change of my identity, right? From being a person who had unlimited time, planning what I'm going to eat, planning how much I'm going to exercise, how much I'm going to sleep, everything, which was kind of like a model that helped me deal with my tinnitus, suddenly having the rug literally pulled from underneath you, and having to rehabituate as a mother of two young children has been the hardest thing ever.
Oh, no, Daphne, thank you so much for sharing that. And it's something that people do not talk about. I guess I'm understanding that you weren't a mother when you first got tinnitus. Was that ever discussed about how, changes, spikes, changes in your situations, where you live, in jobs, stress, and how that could have an impact on tinnitus? Or was that not something you were prepared for?
Yeah, I wasn't really prepared for it. I mean, I knew that. I guess I had realized that there were times when I was stressed and the volume would go up, but I just feel like, because I had this safety net of control and of, like, I've got my routine, I'm in my safe space, I've got, my partner. I've been with my partner for nearly 15 years now. So he was with me when I first developed it in 2016. He was unbelievably supportive. But yeah, just having that, you know, safety net, and knowing that, even when it does spike, I almost didn't really let myself get sucked in. But of course I did sometimes, but not as much as when I became a mother, where I also, I think other things kicked in. Like, I can't believe I've got this on top of motherhood. Also speaking to like other friends who are new mums, and like, people being like, can you just nap in the day when the baby's napping? It's like, no, I can't nap because it makes my tinnitus worse. No, I can't nap because I can't suddenly relax in the middle of the day and just lie down in a quiet space when my tinnitus is raging. No, I can't go from a baby screaming in my ear to suddenly, calming down and not hearing the noise. It's completely different. So no, I don't think that I was particularly prepared by anyone. I think I may have heard anecdotally, things like, someone who was fine with it and then went through grief or something and it got worse.
When you first got tinnitus, that year and a half, you felt like just completely was, just disrupted your identity, how you viewed yourself, your sense of self. In what ways did that happen? Were you working at the time? You mentioned having a partner. How did that disrupt you in your life?
Uh, I mean, firstly, the first part is the sound itself, right? Like just not feeling like when I'm alone, I was scared to be alone. I was scared to like face what this sensation is and what I'm feeling, which was just this automatic, like, the fight or flight response, right? Like just heart pounding, feeling like something's choking your neck, just complete fear and of the unknown and of how intrusive this sound was. Um, and yeah, so the first part was the sound and just the volume of it and just feeling like it's sort of stealing away very simple moments, like, just waking up in the morning, it being there. Whereas, I would wake up and think about the day ahead and what I was going to do and, make a plan for the day, and just feeling like this was completely disorientating and taking away from my concentration, but also my ability to relax, my ability to have a relaxed conversation with my partner. My mind would always be there, either thinking about how annoying this is or thinking about how am I ever going to survive this? How am I ever going to be able to feel like I was, comparing a lot with the past. Um, but also, yeah, just I think I was working, and it completely threw me off there. It was also a job that I had just started. So I was working before that at a really difficult job in terms of the hours, and I was working as a TV producer at Bloomberg Television, and so I was waking up at 4 a.m. to go and produce the morning show shift. And that was before I got tinnitus, obviously. But I do think, looking back, that a lot of these things did play a role, even though, a lot of, even my partner was like, so what else might be going on with you beside the tinnitus? And I would get really angry in the beginning and be like, no, my life is fine. Like, it's just the tinnitus. If only the tinnitus would go away, I would be fine. But then, of course, as time goes on, you do start realizing there are other things feeding into this. Like, I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't sleeping well. I was working this shift where like I was waking up at 4 a.m. and then having to sleep at 2 p.m. when I would get back until 6 when my boyfriend would get back. And then, it was just all over the place. And of course, for me, that was one of the plus sides of tinnitus we'll talk about later, but like it did actually help me start eating healthier, start exercising, start, sleeping better and really taking care of myself. Which again has been disrupted now with motherhood. It all links back. But so I think that was one of the hardest parts. And then just like the loneliness of it and of people not really understanding what you're going through. I have a really good thing that I have, I think, is that I can't really keep my worries to myself or my joys, but like I did share a lot. I didn't keep it inside. And I think on the one hand, sometimes that can be bad because you do end up ruminating quite a bit. But then on the other hand, you don't keep it bottled up and people you do give you help. But I think especially in the beginning with my boyfriend, although he was like excellent and like just wonderful to like in terms of his patience and how much I needed to talk about it and just giving me time and space. And actually, he was the one who was like, it's fine if you don't feel, don't give yourself permission to not be well for a while. Cause I'm also impatient. So I was like, when am I going to start feeling better? When is this going to get better? When am I start going to get used to it? Um, but at the same time, it was lonely because he was a bit like, okay, let's not, try not to think about it, try not to catastrophize, try not to ask yourself these questions. And it was like, well, it's really difficult to not do these things. And as the classic example that the psychologist or I was therapist I was seeing at the time, CBT, was like, if you tell someone don't think about a pink elephant, they're going to think about a pink elephant. So it was this constant like, okay, let me try and put on a brave face, let me try and continue with work and just, not, at least obviously not, obviously it was no way that I couldn't not think about it, but at least to not then spiral into the rest of the internal thinking dialogue that I guess everyone does when they have depression or anything really. But yeah, I completely lost my appetite. I wasn't eating. I lost like, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 kilos. My mom was in the house and my mom was sleeping in my room with me and my boyfriend was sleeping on the sofa for like a month. Um, then at some point she had to leave. Then I went through this whole thing of like, maybe if I go back to Greece and I just leave the UK, maybe, it's the weather here and maybe it's the cold and maybe I just need some sunshine to fix me. And then obviously I came back here and it was even more intense because I was back in my sort of childhood safe place and just coming back here for, I think it was Easter, and feeling like, oh my God, like this feeling and this sound is still here, even though I'm looking around me and I'm in my safe space. And that actually was like even worse afterwards. And then it was just awful. It was just really, really awful. And it was very disorienting, very awful. And I think it was once I spoke to another therapist who back in Greece, um, I then continued living in London, but I was speaking to her still remotely, and she was just like, she's like, I think your biggest problem right now is that you're not accepting it. And I didn't really know exactly what she meant, but now I do. And I think it was just I was fighting so hard to just be like, why me? Why this? Why can't my why don't my why don't my friends have this? Not that I wanted them to have it, but like why can't I relate with anyone right now? How am I supposed to get through this when there are no examples around me of people who have gotten through this? Why am I yeah, why do I have this? And just this anger and just this like almost denial and also this like, oh, maybe it will have gone in like a few months and then those months coming around and it still being there and it making it even worse. So I think once I kind of gave myself this kind of leap of faith to be like, okay, maybe you can get through this and maybe you have to start doing those things that make you happy rather than, because this is a whole other conversation of all the things and all the money I spent trying to fix this. Okay, it wasn't anything insane, but like, I did try reflexology and acupuncture and supplements. And I think that was it. But, once I kind of put that to the side and was like, what if I do just try and see what happens? If I just do the things that are good for me generally, even if I don't feel like doing it now, what might happen. And I did start to get, some glimpses of, oh my God, like, yeah, I do have this sound, but actually I did have fun. And in the beginning I thought, well, this is a lie. Like I'm having fun. I'm laughing with my sister. I'm laughing with my boyfriend. I've just really enjoyed this film. But actually this is all a lie. Like this, the problem is still there. It's not fixed. So why are you enjoying yourself? I was almost like negating and, canceling out my progress by even though I didn't see it as progress then. I was like, oh, this is just my mind playing tricks because, you know, I was just distracted. That's why I'm better now. But then when I started, having more and more of those moments, and then I think the big change came when I got a job that I that I loved, and that was I was surrounded by amazing people and made amazing friends, and it was just the best work environment I've ever worked in. And just because I'm a journalist, I would be like out doing interviews and preparing for things, and like I still would feel this discomfort very often, both in the office and at home and everything. But then I started to get moments where like I just felt like I'm still strong, I'm still capable. And I think when I started having that self esteem built up again, because for me personally, it's really more so than relaxing. I think it's tied to my self esteem and my sense of self worth. And when I started feeling like, wow, I just nailed that interview, or like I just did really well, in this writing this podcast script or whatever it was, or like, oh, I started my own company, I've got this client and I did the pitch by myself. And when I started to like build up that confidence and realize that I was doing it all with the tinnitus, or like, I've had this amazing dinner with my partner or whatever, and obviously there were ups and downs, and I could tell it was on bad days when the rest of my day wasn't going well. It was even worse. But yeah, I think that realization is what was kind of the shift for me.
Incredible to hear, how you talk about when it was really difficult, that transition to you saying, okay, it's difficult, but I'm still going to do these things. That feeling of that denial of how can I be happy and have tinnitus is so
I
real.
remember I was saying to myself, I remember I was saying, and I still do sometimes, I was saying, fake it till you make it, fake it. So I was like, I'm going to put on an outfit that I like. I'm going to pick out my jewelry. I'd stop doing all of that. I'm going to I remember the first therapist was like, how are you? Have you been drinking? Because I guess some people, very unfortunately, might start drinking when they get tinnitus to kind of numb it. But I was the opposite, because I was like, no, I don't feel like going for a drink. I don't feel like drinking when I'm like this, because I usually drink when I'm going to celebrate. And he was like, try and continue, applying your creams, it was like nearing summer then. And I was like, normally I would be like, thinking about my summer outfits, or like, taking care of myself, doing my, any kind of beauty routine or self-care or whatever, maybe a glass of wine with a friend. And I just didn't feel like doing any of that. And then at some point I said to myself, okay. And I remember how forced it was. I remember being like, okay, I am going to put on this piece of music, and I'm not putting on this piece of music to mask the tinnitus. I'm putting it on because I want to put it on, because there's this whole, like, as you know, maybe know, like with when you put on music, you're like, am I just doing this to distract myself, or am I doing it because I really feel like doing it? And then I am going to pick out this outfit and wear it, and I am going to go for a drink with my friend. And I'll see if I feel like talking about my tinnitus. But if I don't, that's still fine. And I can still, and it was forced. And it's horrible when people are like, oh, you look great. And you look, because it is an invisible illness, right? And people are like, you can't, there's no necessarily beginning, middle, end. So you can't afford to be like, apart from the very beginning, okay, when you're completely disoriented, but you can't afford to be like, oh, I'm just recovering. I'm like, no, the secret, for me, the secret was letting life kind of sweep you away again. And so your brain being like, okay, things are normal again. I'm being, because even if you wanted, you couldn't think about tinnitus and all the doom and gloom all the time if you are exposed to, positive things happening in your life. So, but I remember how forced it was, being like, yeah, I'm putting on some lipstick for some reason. Don't know why, but I'm just going to put it on right now. So, yeah.
Takes a lot of courage, Daphne, to do that. Takes a lot of courage. And it sounds like from the position that you're in now, you can see how doing that has got you to where you are today, really. Um,
Yeah.
what's really interesting, you mentioned kind of doing reflexology, acupuncture, but then also therapy. What do you feel really helped you in those beginning stages?
In the very beginning, before I habituated, so in the first year and a half, um, it's hard to say. I think definitely in the state I was in then, the massages, reflexology, acupuncture didn't help me at all, because I was doing it simply because I thought it, not as a means to relax, to then indirectly help the tinnitus. I was doing as a means to treat the tinnitus, as some people claim. So I don't think they helped me whatsoever because I wasn't receptive enough to be helped in that way, and I was my nervous system was completely on edge, and it certainly wasn't going to be, it's like you being completely on edge and someone just touching you, and it doesn't feel good. So I wouldn't say any of that helped me. Um, I think it was just definitely human connection and distraction, but not in the sense of like, oh, I'm in a room, I'm going to put something on so I can't hit mask noise. Just more distraction of like taking your general thoughts off the negative thoughts attached to the tinnitus. So like, you know, talking about something interesting, even when you think like there's no point because I don't care about what's happening in the world right now. I'm in my own cocoon, but actually let me just see what's happening. Let me just, read a news article and discuss it with someone. Let me get out of my shell. Let me go for a walk. I was actually in the beginning, I couldn't face hearing the sound, so I was going outside, which being in London, I couldn't hear the tinnitus outside. So I would take really long walks. Again, it was not like I felt relief. I'm just saying this again. It just was better than the complete panic I felt when being inside. But I'm just saying this so someone doesn't expect, oh, go for a walk and you'll feel great afterwards. No, it's just like took the edge off a bit to go on long walks and just to be outside and just having other stimuli other than the sound. So just what I would see on my walks, which could be nature, but it could also just be the city and just watching other people, talking to my family a lot about it and my grandparents, and just like it did help to go back home for a bit, even if it was just, I think it was like 2, 3 weeks. But even though it didn't help, it just made the difference between how I was before even more stark, like the contrast. But being close to like my grandparents still alive, knock on wood, and just having them like just hug me, just like in the very like, maybe my grandma didn't understand what I was going through. It didn't matter. Like I just felt really like safe and hugged, and just talking about it with like a few select people. I did end up messaging a couple of people, like people that I feel, again, close with, but not like so close that necessarily I would have told them this. But again, just because it's in my personality. And one of the people that I ended up telling was my English teacher. And she was like, "Oh, I also had that." And I was like, she was like, "Yeah, from an ear infection." She's like, "I got it when I was like, when I had given birth to like my first son." And she's like, "Oh, you'll beat this, you'll get through it." And then I remember like suddenly through my conversations with her helping me reach the realization that it's not going to go away from one day to the next. It's going to be a gradual thing. And she was telling me that, um, she slowly was not paying attention to it until she was paying attention to it, but she wasn't getting as worried. And then slowly it went away. And then I was like, "Oh, so it's gone away." And she's like, "Actually, now that I think of it, it is still there. Yeah, I do hear it sometimes, but just it doesn't bother me." And just having her, who's like a real role model when I was growing up, say that and just share that with me. And I wouldn't have been able to get that piece of information if I hadn't, opened up to her. And then another girl who I met because I was an extra just for fun on a film when I was in London. And I remember her saying, "Oh, I've had it since I was very young, but she was like, don't think about it, don't put energy too much to it," because she said it really is a mind over matter thing. And I just started realizing that it is a curse that you can't just take a pill, a magic pill, and it will go away. But on the other hand, the fact that it's not like, knock on wood, it's not like a broken leg or a torn muscle that it's something that with your behaviors and your actions, you can have an influence. It's not going to be now, it's not going to be tomorrow necessarily, but you know that you can trust your brain. I still have a struggle trusting in the process, as I've come to call it, uh, when I have spikes. Also because I'm lucky unlucky in the sense that when it's at its baseline, it's very, very sort of in the background. But when it spikes, which now is quite often because of the life situation that I'm in, it the difference is so obvious that it actually almost makes it worse. Like as soon as I kind of get used to like this, then it goes up, and then as soon as get used to that, I'm like, oh, this is so nice. Like it's calming. I can barely hear it, and then it's like, so this is like for me been one of the biggest challenges, and actually I think one of the reasons why I haven't been able to completely leave it, behind me. But sorry, yeah, going back to your initial question, yeah, I'm struggling maybe to list the things that helped me, but I think I've said the human connection, the sharing to an extent, taking walks, and just doing things that make you happy anyway. Whether it's like watching a film, planning. I'm a big planner. I like planning things, and I think that since I was young, and I think just knowing that like I have something to look forward to is really nice. Like, for me, it's not all about living the moment, actually. I think you can get a lot of power from having nice things to look forward to. So I would like always make sure I had something fun in the diary to look forward to. And that really helped. Um, and just also like, I guess, I think one of the things that you've said is that it's not black and white, that like, having, a great day, but then night coming back and you can hear your tinnitus and actually you feel low for a bit. It's okay. Like it doesn't mean that you have to like be on this constant upward trajectory or else it doesn't count. Like it does count, and eventually those moments will join up, and hopefully the difficult moments will become fewer and far between, and will outweigh the sorry, will be less than the positive than the happy moments. And also I think not comparing. I still do that a lot. Like, uh, yeah, I'm like, well, this person wouldn't have been able to do that if they, or this person wouldn't have been able to read all these books. And actually, I think this is also something that helped me getting a bit stubborn in terms of your goals and in terms of your, so like I'm not, when I say fight it, I don't mean fight the sound, but you can fight to have what you want and to like not redeem yourself, but yeah, to fight for the things that you want in your life, whether it's I'm gonna exercise and I'm gonna get, to the place where I feel good and strong with my body. Um, I'm gonna set, all these goals. I'm gonna uh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought because I wanted to say something about comparing. Yeah, I am gonna like set these goals with my work life, and I'm gonna, find a way to make it work. Or for example, with reading, I loved reading. I wasn't one of those readers like that read a book all the time. It was, read like, I don't know how many books in a month. But I remember when I got tinnitus, one of the things I was really scared about, and because I started hating the sensation of like I'm there reading and I can't concentrate and I can't concentrate on what I'm reading. But I then kind of it actually made me more determined to say, okay, I'm going to find books that I like and I'm going to read them. And actually, I read more after the tinnitus than I did before, just because I was like, because again, sometimes you fool yourself a bit and you're like, is the reason that I'm not reading tinnitus? Like, is the reason that is it all? Because it's so easy to blame tinnitus for everything. Like, it's so easy to be like, oh, if it wasn't for tinnitus, I would be so happy now. And actually, I'm deliberately sometimes I make a point of when I'm not feeling happy or when I'm stressed, but the tinnitus is low, I'm like, look, your tinnitus is fine. I actually do the reverse sometimes, but you're still feeling this way. So remember that, because it's not always tinnitus's fault, because it's so easy to think about the past and how happy I was. And actually, I, I'm not joking. I like the version of myself post tinnitus better than the before tinnitus version. From various lifestyle changes that I made, and also realizations that I had, and also the relationship with my partner became stronger. Like he saw me at my worst, and we managed to, work through it. Um, yeah, I think, and it really breaks my heart when I hear people who get tinnitus and say it ruined my relationship. It really, really upsets me because for me it was like I thought, okay, like what, like maybe he's gonna just not want to be with me, um, or like maybe I'm not going to be a good enough mum. Um, Having this, like maybe I'm not going to be my 100% because I really am the kind of person who likes being 100% in anything that I do. Um, so yeah, just that knowing that is really important.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can see, how that must have made you feel, Daphne, at the time. And you've just got a glimpse of the insight into those thoughts that you had all those years ago. And it really does sound like you've got evidence now that those thoughts weren't true, they weren't facts, but you put a lot of work in to overcome that.
I still feel with the children sometimes, like when I'm having a loud day, and I actually sometimes I'm like, when I'm having one of those days, I'm actually more deliberate about how I play with them, how the time I give them, the attention I give them. Like, I'm not going to be on my phone just because I think I have that fear that the tinnitus will make me less present as a mom. So I think when I do have those bad days, I kind of try to flip it around and be a bit more determined, a bit more deliberate about how I interact around the kids. But I still do have that fear. Eh, yeah, I think I always had, because I've always been quite maternal. So I think I always had that image even before having children. One of the first things I thought about when I got tinnitus actually was like, how is this going to affect me when I have children? Because we all have these images of like a baby lying on you in a quite, I mean, obviously that breastfeeding, complete lie. Well, for me, like wasn't like breastfeeding wasn't like this always. I mean, obviously there were good moments, but it wasn't this peaceful thing. But we all just have these images of like the baby breastfeeding and the mum just being like, ah, bliss. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to enjoy those moments. I'm not going to be able to enjoy like reading to my baby, my kid in a quiet room. Like, and it still isn't always easy, I have to say. Like I still it has stolen a lot of these things from me. Like, I'm not going to pretend like it's easy. It's still not. And maybe when they grow up, I will find, like, again, because I'm in the thick of it now, one of them is 3 and the other one is a year and a half old. So I do recognize that I'm still in the thick of it. And I do have hopes to believe that things will taper out. But I remember, yeah, like having and one of those images. And then I remember when I was better, before I had children, being like, oh my God, I can't believe like I've gotten through this and it's going to be fine. And then in the third trimester of my first pregnancy with all the hormones, it was like the volume literally just shot up. And I combined with like the unknown and the anxiety of like, maybe, the birth and how everything's going to be and all just this anticipation and which you have anyway. And it just like completely like messed me up. And I was like, oh, wait, so I've been fine for 6 years now. And now I'm going to give birth and I'm going to be depressed. Okay, great. That's great. That's very convenient. Um, so again, like the last 3 months, I had like an amazing pregnancy. And then the last 3 months, I was like feeling terrible. And then again, the first year, 10 months, 10 months postpartum, I was feeling terrible. The hormones that affect the ear, the hormones that affect your mood, the sleep deprivation, the just like your nervous system is on edge. Like when you have this fragile thing that you love like nothing else in the world and you're left alone with it and you have and your nervous system is just on edge anyway. You feel like you're constantly, you're taking a shower and you maybe you've heard of this and you feel like you through the shower you can hear the baby crying and then you turn the shower off and there's no baby crying. Well, guess what's there? Raging tinnitus is what's there. So in those moments when you're on edge, like it's just really hard to do all the things that you know how to do normally without having a child and no matter how prepared you are, the stress of breastfeeding, and is my baby getting enough milk, and is my breast producing enough milk, and is the baby getting what, oh, is the baby sick, is the baby sleeping, am I, am I doing a good enough job? And then the guilt on top of that of like, is the baby sensing that I'm, and the people saying to you like, oh, the baby can sense when you're feeling this way. It's like, well, that's not helping, is it? It's not going to make me, and even very well-intentioned people like my grandma, who may have like a different mentality from another age, but like, don't stress yourself out because the baby can sense it, and that might be why the baby is like this. It's like, no. um, so yeah, I had some very difficult months postpartum with the first, and then now I'm having better and better days, but I still feel like I'm not myself or where I was. Maybe I won't get to where I was with my physical body, my physicality, my stamina, my the way I was eating, my sleep. So now I have to find different ways to help it fade in the background. But now I notice things like, oh, I'm having a bad day, but then, I it's not always like this. And especially when I force it, I'm not like, oh, I'm going to have a fun time with the kids now and it's going to, dissipate. No. But there are times when like I will be with the children and we will be laughing and we will be hugging and it will be like very tender. And then I'm like, oh, it's kind of gone down again, So it's like that I'm just having to find new ways to do it like I did all those years ago. And it's just not that easy when you don't have the time.
Of course, of course. But it sounds like from what you've said there that you recognize that you've done this before, but it's about finding new ways. Is there a different level of hope there, would you say, now that you know that you've been through this before, but it's a different situation?
Yeah, for sure. I know that my brain has the capacity to do it. There are always some moments when I feel like maybe something's changed. Maybe this time I won't get over this spike. Maybe this time it's permanent, but it always does. But usually it's things like a loud noise. Like this is one of the things that I can't, unfortunately, completely get over. I mean, I don't really wear hearing ear protection apart from when I'm, in a loud a place with loud music, like a bar or, I don't know, a fitness class, if there is one that might be like particularly loud, or a very loud party or something, or a wedding on the dance floor kind of thing. But sometimes, as you know, the environment, it will come at you from where you least expect it. Like, I don't know, a drill, or when you're walking down the pavement, or even the baby screaming in your ear, or like a speaker that you've left on suddenly goes off or something. And there are some of the trickier times when it's harder to convince myself that it's just nothing permanent has happened. It's just the way I'm reacting to it, the way I'm latching onto it, or whatever. Um, and it's, I think that there is definitely hope, and also what's one of the things that's been great is my partner also now, having been with me so long through this, that he can sort of sense, um he can, well, he started actually he started writing down the moments that I reach my breaking point, which are the moments where I'm like crying to him and being like, I can't do this. It's too hard with the tinnitus. If, I wish this would go away, which is kind of not the moments where I'm like, oh, this is a bit annoying, but the moments where I'm like, really. And he he's basically doing it to show me, because sometimes tinnitus can really lie to you, as depression does, and make you feel like you're feeling like this all the time. And actually he's like, how long it's been since you've had one of these crises? It's been like 3 months, for example. And I was like, really? I thought I was feeling like this a month ago. And he was like, no, it was 3 months ago. And before that, maybe it was 2 months. But there's progress, and it's so nice to have someone to do that for you and to show you, that actually it's your brain is making progress and the system is calming down, but it's just maybe slower than you thought, but it is happening. And it's just so reassuring to have someone to show you that the it's just about letting your brain get on with doing the job of turning the volume down or making you feel safe or making you feel calm again. Because at the end of the day, yeah, like I if it is a bit loud, but I'm feeling calm, it's as you know, it's the reaction to it that's the worst. It's like all of the add-ons that it's not necessarily the sound itself sometimes. So yeah, I feel grateful being able to sometimes zoom out and recognize the progress.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's I have to just go back to say the amount of young women that say to me that thought of what is this going to be like if I have children? Can I have children now? That fear. And there's just not enough for young women and navigating motherhood with tinnitus.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would share with someone who is thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get married, have kids, and do this with tinnitus? Is there anything that you would want to share with them?
I mean, you're right. Like I opened up to my gynecologist about this. Like she was sort of like, yeah, let me take a look at the literature and see. And she's kind of had to look through and see that, when progesterone goes up, sometimes, it affects the fluid in the inner ear. And then there's things like fluid retention in pregnancy, which again can affect the circulation in the ear and all these things. It's a really, really tricky one. Like, what I will say is that it's for some people it could just be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So like I do know women who have gotten pregnant who haven't had an effect on it hasn't had an effect on their tinnitus, number one. So you can't really know. The second thing I would say is I went through that with my son and then I had a second child. So I think if I was if it was so terrible, I wouldn't have done it. And sometimes I know it sounds very philosophical, but like for me, it was worth it, and I would like if obviously if I could someone said for some reason like choose your children or tinnitus, like obviously I would say I choose to have my children with tinnitus rather than not have tinnitus and not have my children. You know what I mean? So I think it's the joy and the fulfillment that you get from having children for me outweighs what you go through. What I will say is that your support system is just so like if we say that the support system is important for every mother, if for women who have tinnitus, it's like the alpha and the omega, like it's the most important thing. Um, so it doesn't have to mean that you have to have money for a night nurse or childcare or like, but if you have like a husband who's supportive or who at least understands your need to sleep or who understands that if you're having a spike he may need to like take on for a couple of nights, or your parents if they're around. Like in Greece we're very lucky because we really have like this ingrained thing of the grandparents are really involved. Like my mum would come over, she would like let me sleep in so I'm not going to lie, like if I didn't have that and if my husband wasn't so supportive and so hands-on, like I would have suffered. Like I did suffer, but I would have not been able to bounce back again, and I think I would have spiraled more. And I did see someone, I think it was after I gave birth. Yeah, after I gave birth to in the first 3 months postpartum when you're feeling down anyway. But then I also had the ear spike, which was so much more than it had been all of these normal years. Um, and I was offered a pill that was an antidepressant that I think was it Xanax or was it sertraline? Anyway, it was an antidepressant essentially. I didn't take it. I didn't take it, but I think if I hadn't had the support system that I did, I would have had to take it, to be honest with you. And there's nothing, wrong with that. And I have a lot of two actually friends who are mothers who did take it in the first months postpartum. And I don't think there's any evidence that it would spike your tinnitus, if I'm not mistaken. to the contrary. I think maybe for some people it helps. I don't know. You'll know more about that. But for me, I didn't do it. And but I think I don't know what other advice I would give really. I think just be prepared and but not to the point that you make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, and make sure that you have your like a plan. Like if you're even if you're a person that sort of is just good with like taking things as it goes, and maybe you will be fine with dealing with the spike and you'll be just so happy with having this little baby in your arms that you won't care. But I think just because hormones are really, really sly, and it may creep up on you without you realizing. I think just have like a game plan in place to know, if I do get this, or, if just generally I need to take a bit better care of myself and I'm not able to like deal with all of this, can I have someone there to support me with the, cooking, within the housework? Can I have someone who will let me sleep in the morning? Can I have a husband who, can I have a husband? Can I order a husband who will wake up every night? So yeah, I think that's the biggest piece of advice I would give. But it's just so much joy that you get from being a mom that I think it's just such a shame to sacrifice that for tinnitus, really.
Thank you so much. I think just even the awareness and having this conversation and listening to that to even allow ourselves to prepare is a massive help. So I really appreciate you taking this time to share your story, your experiences, still on this journey, still trying to trust this process. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Gladys. I really enjoyed speaking with you.